Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished filmmaker from the UAE, talking to us from Cancun, but originally from Australia, Nancy Paton. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Ashutosh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Nancy is a global filmmaker. She's a cultural bridge builder and the founder of Desert Rose Films. Her films have earned over 60 global awards, and she's president of Women in Film and TV Middle East and Middle East and North America, which is the MENA region. So, Nancy, my first question for you. You've lived and worked across Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, London, New York, and Poland. What has shaped your global identity most deeply?
Look, it's not about geography. I think everyone thinks, oh, as I said, I've lived, and when I say lived, I've actually spent over 5 years in all these places. So, working and having a job and being in the social contact with people. I think it's really learning how different people experience the same emotions. Living across cultures, we see that ambition, like love, fear, family, belonging are extremely universal, but they are extremely rooted deeply in the culture that you come from.
Yeah.
So we feel the same, but that kind of experience is slightly different. And I guess extremely when working across the GCC especially changed me because storytelling there is really community, heritage, and I think responsibility. It's such a big part of about who they are. So it really forced me into listening and more than speaking, should I say, which probably fundamentally shaped my approach to life and filmmaking.
Well said, well said. How has your Polish Australian background influenced the stories you choose to tell?
It's influenced me massively because I'm both. I speak Polish. I grew up in a Polish Australia, living between two identities. At home, it was all about history, resilience. It was the memories of what was Poland like, 1,000-year history that I got, and it was always in my language and religion. And then outside, I had this open Australia, going out, playing, reinventing yourself, being whoever you want to be. And so that duality made me naturally drawn to these stories of displacement, identity, and people searching for where they belong. I'm interested in characters who exist between worlds, culturally, emotionally, morally. Because I guess that's where the transformation happens. We grow, we move on. And I know I've seen that in me, how I've become aware due to that dual identity. I really now see two sides of the globe. And then that's allowed me to see more. And probably why I love living in the UAE. It reminds me of Sydney. I've got
beautiful
things
country.
I have, everyone from everywhere, my neighbors. We share food, we share religions, we share culture. I mean, it's tolerant. So I think that's that's how it's influenced my
Absolutely,
stories.
absolutely. And was there a defining moment when you decided to focus on cross-cultural storytelling?
So before I went fully into filming, I was meant to be a doctor and I was studying in Sydney Uni, and I went on a work placement for 12 weeks to Papua New Guinea. And when in Papua New Guinea, I was working in the highlands with tribes and, lots of diseases and conditions but beautiful people. And I listened to the stories of the wise women and wise men, and I learned so much there. And I was like, I can't go back home. And I mean, yeah, I can be a doctor and do good, but I realized there's so much misunderstanding between our cultures and other cultures. And I realize there's so much stories haven't been told and that are so important. And we need to hear it from their voice and from there. And I think that's when I started writing my first screenplay. It was a Papua New Guinea story because I came back home going, I'll finish my honors. I'm not going to do my PhD, and I'm going to go and really learn to write and learn how to tell stories that are going to really make an impact, and allow people into the depth of other cultures and societies. So I think that's where
Yeah,
that first
great
pitch
response.
came.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you speak about narrative ethics. What does this mean in practice when you make films? And give me an example if you can.
So I think there's a few ways that I talk about who has the right to tell the story
Yeah.
and benefits from it being told. And as a woman, and I do with women in film, I talk a lot about, women having the right to tell our own stories because,
Mm.
it's 100 years of men telling our
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not saying men can't, and I'm
Yeah.
also saying that women should be able to tell men's stories. It's not
Correct.
about, but it would be nice just to see us being able to have a bit of a push to balance that, story and that perception.
Mm.
But then when I talk about cultural and like when I work in Saudi or the UAE, allowing the women and I mean, specifically, I work with women, but men as well to tell their story from their point of view and not us as Westerners coming in and
Mm.
telling their story because it's been done so much. Again, they have the right and we should be supporting them. And if it doesn't, it might not work for our audiences per se. Oh, it's not really, but our audiences exist the way they exist because of the way we've been telling them stories. We should allow these other stories to be told the way they need to be told so the audience changes and starts seeing the beauty. So it's about collaboration, it's about research, it's about involving cultural consultants. So I did that with Mountain Boy. We had a cultural consultant. We also had archaeologists from the region, and we worked closely on the facts of the time period, of the way they dressed, the way they, and even like, we had our art department, oh, well, no, we need more color, or I'm like, and they're like, no, this is how they dress. We have to sometimes put our own like, how should I say, algorithms that tell us this is the best way to make a film and be like,
Mm.
actually, the best way to make a film is to be authentic and honest. And so I think because films have this enormous power,
Yeah.
and with it really comes responsibility to portray people with
Mm.
dignity and truth. So
Absolutely.
I think that's where I really vouch people, and we saw the magic of Mountain Boy, and we're doing that with our future films as well.
Mm.
And that's, I think, the way forward is to really work with the teams and properly and involve them
Mm.
in.
Fascinating. Nancy, how do you ensure authenticity when telling stories across cultures that are not necessarily your own?
Well, I think what I just said earlier, I think a lot of us Western foreigners, or not just, and also we've been taught a certain way of filmmaking, and so we come on set, when we're writing, we think we know, we come with the answers, or this is how it should be done, and actually, I think we need to come in more with curiosity,
Mm.
like let's find the answers together, let's work with local writers, historians, and artists, these communities, and facilitate the voices rather than being the owner of them. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, let's try it differently. Let's try it your way. Um, let's see, I think I mean, it's hard to do because we have budgets and we have, expectations and it's coming from above. But I think when you put your foot down and you listen and you're curious and you're like, well, why? And then sometimes, I mean, on Mountain Boy, we did, we're like, oh, but actually, I know it didn't work then, but
Mm.
actually, this could be. And they're like, you know what? Because we don't know how it was.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a situation, a probability. And then when they thought about it from the culture aspect, like, you know what? There could be a possibility. And actually, yeah, maybe that makes a bit of sense. And so we work together to see, can we push those, but does it make sense? If it really is a hard no, then hard
Mm.
no. But if you can, collaborate and explore together, and then you'll find the answer together, working
Interesting.
together.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Your films have won over 60 global awards. How do you choose which stories to tell?
Okay. So I choose what makes me feel. When I remember I was working at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, and I met this girl called Maisie. I went back to my science, trying to pay bills, and I was lucky enough to work with a great doctor and this skin disease, it's condition, it's terminal condition. I met a girl, and she just made me cry, and I got so fascinated. I just wanted to be around her. She made me believe in so many things. She enlightened me. And I was like, I have to tell her story. So
Mm.
I put pen to paper and I wrote about her, and I wanted to tell that story because it was like, it's important that people know. And no one knew about this condition. I was like, if anyone's going to do it, I'm going to do it. And the
Mm.
same thing with Papua New Guinea or with Saudi or with UAE. And it's not about the whole, it's like I'll meet someone or I'll hear someone and I'll be like, you know what, I think it's really important. I think a lot of people are needing it, mothers or fathers or specifically now we're in a time where we actually need really honest stories about people and humanity. So, and there's so many right now that I want to do, but I don't have the time and bandwidth. But
Absolutely.
I think it's just finding the one, we were meant to film a film currently just
Mm.
about an Emirati girl and a boy, a British boy, about, a friendship between two cultures. And and it was, and we've had to put a pause until after the summer, but
Yeah.
I'm really more now determined to tell this story because we really need to understand those relationships and the love, the friendship love between cultures that we're really missing. So, and sometimes some stories won't go ahead, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's not the right time. Others don't go ahead, and you're like, hang on, I got to push this one more because it is the right time. So it's
Mm.
just really being aware of who you are and what your
Yeah.
brand is as and knowing what means something to you and then going for that.
Amazing. My next question is something I ask a lot of filmmakers. What distinguishes a powerful story from just a good film?
Well, a good film entertains you. I saw Project Mary the other day, and I really loved it. Took my kids. It was great. And actually, I was also in some ways moved, by the alien, and we cried and stuff. But I think a powerful story changes how we see the world or ourselves.
Mm.
Um, and we talk about it like I'm talking about Project Mary, but we talk about like those little itty gritty things, like oh that like it irritated me, or I wasn't sure about that. You start picking on things because it's picking on you. It's internally going. Making you ask questions. It's making you think of something. I mean, and they create empathy. There's like this long emotional spark of conversation. I mean, that's where I think is a story that really is a powerful story that
Great
makes us,
response.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it might not be a high budget, it might be the lowest budget, but it just asks a question and doesn't answer sometimes. You've got to
Mm.
answer it. So
Great
yeah.
response. Well said. Moving on, Nancy, as president of Women in Film and TV, MENA, what are some of the biggest barriers, in your opinion, that women still face?
Um, Look, I think we're getting, I don't, I'm really trying to be positive. I guess that's my Australian.
Yeah.
Um, and it's sometimes hard being, the president and really vouching for people because people think I'm so negative against men and I'm not. I love my husband. I've got boys. I'm very pro men. It's not, and it's not that there is lots of opportunity and we are getting it and we're growing.
Mm.
But I mean, there is access issues. I mean, there's not many women in massive leadership roles in
Mm.
studios and in distribution channels,
Mm.
financing. Financiers, specific investors want people with massive CVs and massive. It's like, well, you can't get a CV unless you have those opportunities. You need to
Mm.
make a few films. And so people need to finance them to let the directors grow and let the writers grow and storytellers but they just prefer to go down the route where, this director's done 30 films and he's a man and he's going to tell the same story. So, and that's still happening. And I'm sadly still seeing it. And I still have to be banging on doors and, really going, come on, guys, like it's gonna, you be really, it's a long-term change. It's a long-term investment. We really, yeah, we need this, we need change from these areas so that women can really and be allowed to tell their story from their point of view
Yeah.
as well, not be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, it has to be this way because that's the algorithm. That's how,
Mm.
so no, the algorithm exists because statistics, it's from statistics and movies are going to be made this way. So that, of course, the AI is going to say this.
Mm.
So let's just try to make differences and see where that goes. And then maybe in 10 years'
Yeah.
time, we can start saying, okay, well, this is a better way to structure a story.
I'm sure we'll get there. Absolutely. So tell me, what was your vision when you founded Desert Rose Films?
So I actually it was another name at first, and I moved to the UAE, and I love desert roses, and I have a lot of them in my house, and my favorite flower bush. But also I love the Sting movie, the Sting song, which I love listening to it. But I think the desert rose is really like a woman, and like women in the desert, this beauty, but the hardship that comes from being in the desert, but the roots that are so strong that can feel, this kind of metaphors, and that I just was like, I want to. And also the culture, these cultures that are like I said, Papua New Guinea, Saudi, China, India, like all these, my Polish, they're rooted and they're beautiful. So it's not about women's voices, but it's also about those cultures. And I really kind of wanted to. I thought the Desert Rose is the perfect thing, but for me, it was really just to focus, remind me to keep, keeping those roots growing and finding that beauty within that, the women's voices and the cultural differences between the Middle East and the West. And so, yeah, the vision still
Yeah, yeah,
stands.
yeah, absolutely. And you've described that you're building an ecosystem. What does this
Yes.
look like in practical terms?
I think for us, we have that, with Mountain Boy, it started even before Mountain Boy. We have a slate of products. And originally I was, they were kind of standalone and we're kind of now showing, okay, well, these three films are standalone, but they're for this female director who's a Marathi and they go under her branding and let's create that ecosystem for her. Let's then think about this film. We have another one, which is an Emirati based on a book story, which actually has 7 books. So it's a franchise. So it's like a bigger ecosystem for that film, but again, allowing female directors to direct the films and like creating that ecosystem. But it's also in those, there's mini ecosystems of developing the talent. We're growing that talent through the projects, the mentorships. They're not isolated projects anymore because it doesn't work. They, in some sense, they might feel that they are different, but we're really trying to now package them in ways that we're showing that, by growing this team over 4 films, we're going to be able to build bigger impact. We're going to build bigger storytelling in that genre, in that cultural awareness or story that we're trying to,
Mm.
so that's kind of developed. Yeah, it's beyond that single film and just really like the Desert Rose
Yeah.
ecosystem,
Yeah.
like going a little bit deeper, because I think we're seeing that a lot that people want to attach themselves, audiences, to something that means something to them, and a one-off, it just doesn't work. It really needs longevity, so it needs more projects. Yeah.
Amazing. What makes a global studio succeed today in such a highly fragmented content world?
Well, we see studios going through a lot right now. I think there's a lot of changes, but I think it's clarity on their identity.
Mm.
I think, I've talked about my identity as Desert Rose, and I'm really clear about, my kind of cultural and female, drive. I think they need to be more culturally intelligent, as much as commercially strategic.
Mm.
I think they're very focused on, that, as I said, those algorithms and everything. I think audiences are getting smarter. It's so accessible now for content that people, prefer to go on YouTube and watch shorts than actually sometimes watch a film because they just seen the same thing over and over again. It doesn't teach us anything, doesn't do anything for us. It's She
Mm.
just numbs us instead of enlightening us. And I think, yeah, cultural intelligence is a little bit something they should really
Cool,
start
cool,
investing in.
cool, cool. And what role do you see of streaming platforms in shaping global narratives?
I mean, streaming platforms were really exciting when they came in, really, because we were very all like,
Mm.
we've now got this indie market and audiences, and and audiences can discover these voices from all over the world. Like we're watching stuff from India, from Mexico, from Pakistan, from all over the world. We see from Sweden, from Finland, these great TV shows and movies that we'd never see before. Which is really exciting that they are doing it. But I think it's become a bit of a problem as well now because they are chasing those algorithms and they are as well steering into their and not funding in the sense of risky stuff. I mean, they're really taking on this. Yeah, I think there's a shift there going on as well. Like I'm seeing great stuff. They're now doing theater releases and which is
Mm.
amazing. They're allowing those, but again, it's feeling a little bit like a studio than a streaming platform. And I think it's just understanding, allowing it to be the space of new voices and allowing us access into they don't want to spend money on new voices from different cultures. They want it kind of for nothing. Where actually they should be really investing in those new voices to make them better quality
Mm.
and giving us variety than just again the same. So
Mm.
it's become a little bit of a hurdle, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping it will come out of it.
And you just gave me examples of many countries. Are we moving towards more inclusive storytelling, or it's still at a surface level?
So I mean, I I say I'm trying to be positive. So,
Hmm.
like I'm seeing a lot. I'm in Cannes right now, and the
Mm.
festival starts today. And yeah, there are talks on inclusivity. There is so much more than was when I first started coming here 16 years ago. So, I definitely am seeing the talks are changing. Yeah, we're getting 1 or 2 films here and there, but I still think we could do more. I
Mm.
mean, we can always do more. And I think it's just being aware as producers and writers when we're writing or producing to just be like, are we really including everything that we could include in this? Is it really the truth, or are we just writing it to be commercially successful and
Yeah.
forgetting just because it's too dangerous to touch
Mm.
that topic? And so. Yeah, I think we are, and I hope we get more. So
I'm sure. I'm sure.
let's talk in 2 years and see where we get to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have time for two more questions for you. I think
Okay.
you've partly answered my next question, but I'm going to ask you in any case, how do you see the future of international co-productions evolving?
I mean, that's why I am here in Cannes, because we are doing more co-productions with so our main focus with Desert Rose Films did shift slightly after Mountain Boy, because we realized we were not going to be able to distribute successfully without the
Mm,
co-production treaties, without the co-production relationships. And I think more people want to work in the UAE and vice versa in Saudi Arabia. So there's now the ability to do more co-productions. There's
mm,
more want internationally, which is exciting. So I'm glad I'm here. But I think that is the way forward, because we are the globe now. We're not just kind of our own. We work, in each country, we have people from everywhere. And I think we're multinational, cultural, diverse, and I think co-productions allow for that diversity within the production. So yeah, I think it's a really important part now moving forward. I think many people are seeing it, and that's
mm,
really that is actually good at moving
mm.
forward.
And my last question for you, Nancy, what advice would you give to young women entering global cinema today?
Um, so well, so much, but I think your greatest asset is your perspective,
Mm,
is who you are. I think we really, and I did it when I lived in New York and America, and I remembered, wanting to get in and, really just changing, not really fighting because I was like, oh, I won't get the job, or if I'm too controversial, or if I'm too honest, or if I'm too me, I will not be able to succeed. So
mm,
I've learned the opposite. I learned that living in Saudi Arabia, actually, and the UAE, which I'm so grateful for, because I realized that my voice was respected, and actually my opinion and my knowledge was important, my point of view, because you can't make the right decisions unless you have all points of views at the party. So I think for women, I think it's really just remember that is your asset. So figure out who you are, what's your story, and don't try to imitate these existing voices, these social media trends, or these trends that then just not, unless it is you. I'm just but be clear about who you are.
mm,
Um, Build relationships between cultures, stay really curious, and understand both the creative and the business side of the business. Sometimes people get very creative and they forget this is a business. So yeah,
mm.
I think authenticity endures. That's it.
Absolutely.
Be authentic and be you.
Yeah, yeah. And on that note, Nancy, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this one has been. I've spoken to many filmmakers, and I just love your perspectives of multicultures across multiple countries, and the fact that you are now looking at collaborating with so many
Yes.
different countries, with so many different organizations. Thank you so
Thank
much for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.